Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you'll never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourself.
There are two ways in which people are controlled. First of all, frighten people, and secondly, demoralize them. An educated, healthy and confident nation is harder to govern. And I think there's an element in the thinking of some people. We don't want people to be educated, healthy and confident because they would get out of control. The top 1% of the world's population own 80% of the world's wealth. It's incredible that people put up with it. They're poor, they're demoralized, they're frightened, and therefore they think perhaps the safest thing to do is take orders and hope for the best.
All right, so I wanted to talk about CBDCs and demoralization, because really I think that CBDCs aren't inherently a bad idea. They could actually be a really good thing, like anything, like any technology. They could be used for good or bad. And actually, it could be a major improvement upon the current fiat money that we have, because you could actually introduce sound money principles into CBDCs. But obviously, I mean, the concern is that the existing power structure is likely going to be the one to program something like that and to design it. Really, it'd be ideal if we could implement CBDCs that aren't going to take away our freedoms. But I mean, you look at these clips from people from the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, and really that they want to use it to control us.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
And they're using the specter of CBDCs to demoralize people. And it's something that I feel like they want people to fear this idea of programmable money. They want us to be afraid of it so that we don't think about it too much. We could really turn the tables on these people and demand that we have a CBDC that actually works to the benefit of the people rather than to the government and to our controllers. And really, I think the demoralizing aspect of these people just telling us that they're going to be able to do all these different things to us with central bank digital currencies has terrified people. And you just mentioned CBDCs to people, and the concept just terrifies them. And because they're terrified of it, they don't really think too closely, or too deeply rather, into how it could be beneficial. Because really, I mean, you see these things where like people are saying that they'll only use cash and they'll only accept fiat. And that's actually very foolish, especially if you look at what's going on with all the inflation that's happening now. Like our fiat currencies, they're not sound money. They're actually largely kind of Ponzi schemes. And it's probably going to be the case that they're going to try to impose CBDCs on us when these things kind of collapse. And if people don't understand that this technology could be used for good, they're just going to sit there and take it. They're just going to accept whatever's handed out to us. I think it's incumbent on anyone who recognizes this to show people that programmable money could actually work in our benefit, to the benefit of the masses and not just the people on top. And that's not going to be easy because they've been so heavily conditioned already to just be absolutely terrified of the concept in general. And I think rightfully so, because it could be a really dystopian nightmare if we moved on to central bank digital currencies that are designed by the people that are currently running the fiat financial system. So I don't think the powers that be aren't going to create a central bank digital currency that works well for the average person. I think if they were to try to force it on us, they'd make it very attractive at the beginning and then incrementally make changes to it that would become very dystopian. I mean, all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, a lot of those could be achieved just by forcing people onto a central bank digital currency. And then slowly adding rules that impose those guidelines on us. So, I mean, things like 15-minute cities, limits on what you can spend in the name of sustainable development, in the name of carbon tracking. These are kind of nightmare things if they were imposed on us. So I feel like we really need to educate people about this idea of programmable money and how it's just technology that could be used for good or bad. And if we were the ones to design, like if we had central bank digital currencies designed by and for the people, that could actually work really well for us. But we know that's not going to just be given to us. It's something we'd have to demand. And it's something that we'd have to be very careful in creating, so that it couldn't be changed over time to become dystopian, to become a control system. But it could very well be used to free us from the existing clutches of our financial system, which really doesn't work in our benefit. Callie, this way. So I think it's actually by design that they've used this idea of central bank digital currencies to just terrify people. Because people that are afraid, they don't understand these things. I mean, it's like that video I'm going to play at the beginning of this. People just accept whatever is given out to them. And there's certain things where the Federal Reserve in the United States, they're moving to this ISO 20022 standard next year. There's a framework that would need to be in place before they could roll out central bank digital currencies, that those currencies could play nice within the existing financial system. And that's kind of a step in that direction. Because really what this standard will do is it'll allow interoperability between these financial entities, these big banks, to play with blockchain assets and fiat, and pretty much to swap between them in a seamless and a more effective way than the SWIFT system. And really, I think there's this whole framework that's being built behind the scenes. I mean, I'll link to some of that here. Maybe I'll show it on screen. But these people, they're distracting everyone with this Ponzi game that the current crypto market is. They want everyone playing in this Ponzi casino while they build the financial system that they're going to transition everyone to. And really, if people don't wake up to the reality that they're building this system, they'll probably crash the existing system and transition us to some central bank digital currencies that they've designed. And if people don't know any better, they'll just accept it. So really, I'm not exactly sure how we can break people out of this cycle where they're just demoralized and they just accept whatever's done to them. Because that's not something that's going to be easy to do. People are just kind of broken, especially after COVID. I mean, COVID was such a demoralizing time for people. And there's a small number of people that have gone in the other direction. They're very active now. I mean, it kind of lit a fire under some people and has motivated them. I would count myself among them, although I was pretty motivated well before COVID. It's something that really, I almost feel like the future of the human race as a whole kind of hinges on whether or not people will just lay down and take this, or if they'll fight back. And I don't mean fight back in like taking to the streets in anger, but actually demanding something intelligent and not just yielding to whatever is forced on us. If people are demoralized, they're just going to yield to whatever is done to them. I feel like there's definitely people who want to resist what they see is happening, what they think the future holds for us, but they don't know what to do about it. And large part of that is just they don't understand how these things work. And that the fracturing of the entire crypto community into all these different shitcoins, which are kind of their own, they form their own kind of cults around their coins. There has to be a coming together around a common goal to stop this. And again, I think people in the blockchain and crypto space who actually understand these technologies, we have the biggest role to play in this, because I mean, you see these conferences that are held. The one in, I forget which country it was in, but the Global Governance Conference. I'll put a clip of it in here.
I remember talking to an Australian diplomat at one point about this break between the US and China, and said, you know, both sides are going to say, whose team are you on? And he said, our job is to make sure the question never arises. But the question has arisen. And so I think we have to go deeper. And it's not about the US versus China. It's about what underpins a world order is always the financial system. I was very privileged. My father was an advisor to Nixon when they came off the gold standard in '71. And so I was brought up with a kind of inside view of how very important the financial structure is to absolutely everything else. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well. And the question is, will that new system of digital money and digital accounting accommodate the competing needs of the citizens of all these locations so that every human being has a chance to have a better life? Because that's the only measure of whether a world order really serves.
They're pretty much saying the new global financial system is going to run on blockchain. And again, if we allow those types of people to design that and then force everyone else onto it, it's going to be a nightmare future for everyone, except for them, who will pretty much have unlimited control over us. Those sustainable development guidelines, like people who like your guns, it's different depending on where you live, but I mean, in Canada, the government pretty much knows every type of gun you have, because there's a logbook kept when you buy it. I mean, all of our handguns are registered. Any restricted firearm is registered in Canada. So they can just tell you your bank account doesn't work until you turn that in. What are you going to do? I mean, that's just one example. I mean, they could very easily get people to turn in their firearms. Like, all right, you're not going to buy food for a week until you turn in your firearm. And I'm sure that they would probably not even have to go that far. Just the threat of that alone would work on a lot of people. And again, I don't know how to get demoralized people to snap out of it and to like care about what's being done to them. I think that's a problem that collectively we need to find a solution to. I mean, my background's not in psychology, but it's a psychological problem that it's a collective psychological problem. It's a group problem that we have. And I'm not saying we have to snap everyone out of it, but we have to snap enough people out of it that we can come up with a better solution than what the government might force on us in the event that our traditional financial system comes tumbling down. And really, I don't even know if it would just come tumbling down. There may be a controlled demolition of that as a pretext for forcing us onto this new blockchain central bank digital currency system. I've said it before, and I've said it many times. These people, they think really far ahead. They don't think a year in advance. They think many years in advance. And I'm sure that they have this whole game plan that they're going to run on us to try to convince us to accept central bank digital currencies that have been designed by them for their benefit. And again, they might make it really appealing to us at the beginning, and then add restrictions, add limitations, add all kinds of things to them that will not benefit us at all. And will really just give them unlimited control over society, to such an extent that it would be very hard to mount any sort of resistance after the fact. Because they'll just be able to turn your money off or control your money to such an extent that you can't make any sort of effectual change. Like, we wouldn't even necessarily be able to mount protests because they might have such control over us that you won't be able to travel freely anymore. And it's so late in the game on this that we really need a lot of people to think about that and think about how we're going to react if that happens. Because again, we have to have an intelligent plan. We can't just act like idiots. And taking to the streets in anger without a game plan, without an intelligent plan, without an intelligent demand is probably going to end very poorly for us. Because I mean, you see people like Klaus Schwab saying that we have to anticipate a world where people are far more angry. And I'd imagine if this gets forced onto people, there's going to be a lot of angry people who probably will go to the streets in anger with no other plan than to vent their anger. And those of us who know better, we have to equip those people with knowledge and a plan that will actually have some chance of success. Because none of these protests where people just go to the streets to vent their anger ever accomplishes anything, other than invoking a clampdown usually. And again, these people planning far ahead, I'm sure they've considered this. So we don't want to play into the trap that they've laid at our feet. We don't want to rush forward into a gambit where we get caught up doing exactly what they anticipated we would do. Because I'm sure they've anticipated our response to these things when they try to roll these things out. So I mean, again, we're late in the game here. They've got a lot of things in place to do this. There's probably, like, again, probably a few years, maybe 5 years left where we can rally the troops that are on our side, the side of freedom and not being controlled by these people, to actually come up with something. And there's certain places where people are so divided that it's probably not going to work out for them, no matter what. Because they're so caught up in the trivial differences, so caught up in these insignificant things that we perceive as making us different from one another. That, if I'm being totally honest, these people will probably succeed in a lot of places. At least at first. And it's scary to think about. It's almost demoralizing to think about, right? But you have to resist the urge to become demoralized. Because again, that's part of the playbook. Don't fall into the trap that they've laid at your feet. Don't become demoralized. Light a fire under your ass. Because really, my motivation for me is my wife and my kids, the people I care about the most in this world. I'll do a lot more for those people than I will for myself. I'll put my life on the line for my kids and for my wife. And again, I'll stick my neck out for them. And I think that's a common thing that kind of unites all people, is that people will definitely do more for the kids and the people that they love than they will for themselves. But we need to be able to show people that there's something that they can do, something that they can demand, that's a reasonable alternative to what's going to be forced on us. And it's very hard to do this, because as soon as you talk to people about central bank digital currencies or programmable money, the pre-programmed biases kick in. Certain people, you just mentioned CBDCs, their eyes immediately gloss over. And if you try to speak in support of it in any way, or in support of blockchain or crypto or digital assets, stablecoins, synthetic dollars, they just think of the worst things. And again, the people in the crypto community, we haven't been great at showing off the positive side of what this could be. Again, we're usually just using it for degenerate gambling, and the technology as a whole has gotten a bad rap because of it. And again, I'm just one person. I don't have a think tank of people that I can bounce ideas off of. I've got a little bit of a network of people in crypto that I bounce these ideas off of, but the general public as a whole has to do a much better job of getting informed about how these things work and how they could work to our benefit, so that we can actually demand something better when they're forced on us.